Welcome to the NNN show. I'm your host, Chris Tysis, and we're here to talk about the passing of Etika, the known YouTuber online for the Nintendo community and for video games in general, of his passing and suicide of of him. Unfortunately, he went missing a few days ago, and unfortunately, his body has been recovered by police, and it seems like he had taken his life over a bridge, and he had been found in the river, which is horrible news, horrible news. And my thoughts go out to his family and friends and all of his fans that who are definitely mourning his loss and stuff like that. And this is always a hard thing because um, mental health is probably one of the great challenges of people's health nowadays. And I guess there's a number of things to talk about his passing and things like that. But I think this is more of a general thing. I think with him and in his case, um, some people thought he was trying to get attention. Some people thought that he had clear mental health issues. Obviously, the attention seeking was real. The attention seeking was that he needed help. And clearly, a lot of the stunts that he was pulling, those were cries of mental health help. And I think for some people, they could not um, properly understand um, the differences between, attention seeking for the sake of it and attention seeking, crying for help from mental illness. And as you know, with this channel, I do suffer from clinical depression and anxiety. Um, some of you may know probably nearly 19 years since my mother committed suicide. So unfortunately, I do have a lot of experience in the sort of the mental health scope. And I think especially for YouTubers, it's a very stressful job. Even if you don't earn any money like I do, I'm not a big YouTuber. I wouldn't know the high stakes it is for that. And, especially when you're thinking about different videos to make and, making money on YouTube and things like that. But I think the issue with Etika is that when someone takes their life who commits suicide, there will always be unanswered questions. Um, you know, only his medical files might tell a couple stories. It might answer a couple questions, but unfortunately, you'll never know the full picture. You'll never know that because even in his mind at the very end, it was so clouded and so disrupted. His mind was so disrupted by his depression um, that we'll never know what truly went through his mind. And I think that's the scariest thing of all. And if he can't work it out, and if he couldn't solve those issues, then we can't understand what he really went through. And I think that's the saddest thing of all is trying to unravel the mind of mental illness because it's different to every individual person. It's like a cancer. Mental illness is the cancer of the soul. It's something that sort of eats away at you over time. And it's a real tragic event that's happened to him. And he had a lot of fans in that. Clearly you saw his mental health played out in public, which is probably magnified his own mental health struggles as well. He couldn't do it in a private way because he was such a public figure online. And that would have probably played into his thinking that, of taking his own life. He had his own channel cancelled a few times because he put up inappropriate content on it. And I think that was a call for help. And who knows how many people tried to reach out to him in private to try to get him medical attention. And I think people would have been frustrated to hear about him, going into a mental ward or going to hospital and only being released after a day or two, where clearly, he needed a lot longer in there, and he needed either medication or psychiatry work, or, whatever treatments that was needed for him to get better. And I think that's the hardest thing, is that we can speculate all we want about what was going through his mind, but the great mysteries of mental illness, one of life has claimed, is that we're just never going to know. We can only piece together a few jigsaw pieces to an incomplete picture. And you probably saw, um, streams of him and videos of him where you saw the mental health slowly eating him alive. And I've had moments like that too, and I'm sure that many other YouTubers and people in general have those issues. And I think the one thing that I saw was on Drama Alert by Keemstar, where he literally went on for 20 minutes talking about that he was the Antichrist and he wasn't afraid of death and things like that. And I don't know about that, because I saw Keemstar on Twitter saying that, look, he always wanted to be on Drama Alert and this was his dream come true and things like that. And yeah, that's probably right. But I just don't know if it was appropriate thing for him to publish an interview of a man who clearly was going through the middle of a mental health breakdown. Might have been good for views, might have been good for his channel, it might have been good for Etika because it was his dream to go on the channel, but, as if he's going to be a journalist or something like that, was it the most appropriate thing for him to do? Maybe he could have pulled him aside and say, look, good interview, but I just don't feel right about publishing it because you clearly are having mental health issues. I want you to get help. Go get yourself help. Come back on the channel when you're fine and you're in a mental state where you can give out a proper interview. That could have been something that he could have done. And I'm sure that he didn't have any, ill intents. And yes, he was, giggling a bit during the video when he was talking about being the Antichrist and that. And clearly his logical thought patterns were pretty much gone by then. But I think looking at his I'm sorry video, he might have had a moment of clarity, on looking probably at that interview, looking at all the different mental health breakdowns that he had, and he probably felt a lot of shame, especially men with mental health issues. Um, we're pretty shit at expressing our feelings, you know. He would have looked at all those issues and gone, wow, I feel really embarrassed. I feel like I've let down a lot of people. And what am I going to do? How do I make this up? And when the mountain is too hard and it's too difficult, some people go, might be time for me to check out of this world. Might be time for me to go. And who knows, maybe in his last few videos before his I'm sorry video, maybe that he was kind of preparing his audience. He was preparing his fans for the end. There was definitely some little cryptic wordings. He was saying that, um, the journey might be coming towards an end for him. And I think one of his appeals was his general overexcitement about Smash Brother reveals. He wasn't part of the hype train, man. He was like the fucking train driver of that. He was a guy that used to drive that sort of excitement, and I wasn't a huge fan of his stuff. I didn't watch all of his videos, but it was always fun to watch him do a reaction of a new character, and that's what I liked about him. His general enthusiasm and excitement of a new character, and even if it was a Smash Brothers character that you weren't into, he always seemed to make it bloody entertaining and sort of got you excited to do those sort of things. And unfortunately, his mental health issues was too great for him to overcome. And that's essentially what suicide is at the end of the day. And I know a lot of people online are going, here's a bunch of phone numbers. If you need help, go call that number, da 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 da. And that's all good and well. But for someone who does struggle with mental health issues and that, there's a lot of us that doesn't want to talk to a complete stranger on a phone about deep and personal problems. If we are not comfortable to talk to our own close friends about our mental health struggles, we're probably not going to talk to a stranger on the phone or in person at this time. So it's a bit like being caught out in the rip, out of the beach, or you're in quicksand and you're sinking fast. You know, blurting out a phone number is not going to save them. If you know someone with mental health, then you've got to get in the water and try to pull them out. It's that serious. You know, someone's having a stroke or someone's choking. You don't give them a phone number for 000 or 911. You try to help them out. And I know that some will refuse and that sort of thing, but sometimes you've got to grab them out and try to help them. And he won't be the last YouTuber, I believe, to commit suicide. There will be more until we try to work out a cure. That's really the only way. That, like cancer, trying to find a cure and trying to find a way of trying to make life easier with people with mental health issues and that. And I think that's the saddest thing of all. Another life lost to a mental health issue. And we'll never know completely what was through his mind at the end. We can only try to make suggestions or make a logical response like me, but I don't know what through his mind in the very end. Maybe he felt shame and guilt about what he had done in the last few months or the last few years, or maybe he just was tired of it. He just literally just wanted to end it all. And unfortunately, he was successful in that. So where does it leave everyone? Well, it leaves a lot of his fans devastated, you know. And I think the best thing for them to do is, take your time to mourn his loss. Think about other people who have mental health issues. Talk to them. Pick up the phone. Go to the house. Talk to them about that. Don't just give them the phone number and go, well, that's my job done. He or she will be fine. Go and volunteer for a charity for mental health. Donate money. Do something proactive in his memory. Don't just tweet numbers and say, oh, geez, it's terrible about his passing on Twitter or Facebook or YouTube, because it's not going to do anything. It's not going to make a change. People need to be proactive about this issue now, because it will take more lives. There will be other YouTubers that you love and admire who will be going through similar issues, and I think there's a strong likelihood this will happen again. But it is a horrible way for him to go, and hopefully this will raise even more awareness of mental health issues and things like that. But it is a terrible, terrible ending. And even, with my mum passing away 20 years later, I still think about it a lot. I still think about what I could have done. I'm sure that there's a lot of guilt from people thinking, could I have done more? Maybe I should have gone and visited him more. Maybe I should have done something. But, when suicide happens, it happens. And it's always a shock. You can't really prepare yourself. You can't say, well, he's really mentally unwell. He's going to commit suicide at some point. You just can't. And it just makes it extremely hard for people to wrap their minds around mental health and suicide and stuff like that. So it is a very, very sad situation. So it is a very sad time. Hopefully, and I'm sure that his fan base will be remembering him in many different ways, and I hope that some good comes out of it. More awareness of mental health issues and a more of an understanding when people do cry out for help. And some people do it in very subtle ways. Some people do it in very big extreme ways, putting up inappropriate videos, making grand statements online, all sorts of little signs. You've got to look for the signs. You can't just look at it as scenes, attention grabbing and things like that. Because clearly, all the times that he did try to grab attention, that was a call for help. And a lot of those signs went unnoticed. So I think that's all I've got to say about the issue. I'm sure that a lot of other YouTubers will be talking about it and their grief and sorrow and, all the what ifs, what if I did this or what if I did that? But all we can do is look at um, his loss and see what we can do in the future to help improve mental health issues. Because that's all we can do now. You can't bring him back. He's gone. So all we can do is prevention of other people who are going through the same issues. So that is it for me, and I shall see you next time.